Hello and welcome to the latest episode of My First Property Sale, our video series that asks you, the reader, about the first commission you ever earned. I'm Marc Shoffman, the editor of Estate Agents Today, and on this episode I'm joined by Damian Wanstall of Prestige and Village.
Hi Mark.
Thanks for joining us. Do you want to start by telling us a bit about your background, like how you got into agency, because it's quite an interesting story.
Okay, well, I was in the rag trade for about 25 years, worked at quite high level, supplied sort of most of your major high street stores from M&S, Matalan, Reece, Tesco, Sainsbury's, etc., Primark. And then obviously we were hit by this unfortunate pandemic, which threw everything in the air, and I was furloughed initially, by which time I'd also become sort of quite weather worn with the whole industry that I was in. Also could see where it was going, with more and more of the big retailers going direct and sort of bypassing intermediaries like myself. So I was quite despondent, and then there was talk of redundancies, and I'd been with the company quite a long time, so I immediately put my hand up and volunteered, which was, it's not a life-changing sum anymore, redundancy money, but it's a good backstop, and I knew that it would give me a sort of springboard to sort of plan my future, if you like. And that was when I started. I didn't really have a plan at this point, so I just started to look around and see what I was interested in, and I've always been interested in properties. And that's when I looked into, people started approaching me about licenses, and that's when I got interested and started to see how the model worked, and that's when I got involved with my first license. Originally, I started out with Easy Property, which, great bunch of guys, great, I've got nothing bad to say about them whatsoever, but I did find that they were working on a very small fixed fee, which is great for the vendor, but very hard work for a one-man band like myself, because it's working on high volume, low margin, which in my old trade, when you're supplying Primark, works really well. But simply for a one-man band to sell properties and earn just under £500 per property, it's not great money. And you could, just in time and petrol and effort. And it also, when you're portraying yourself as you want to be customer service, you want to be portrayed, you give the best service that you possibly can. It's very difficult to then do that and maintain searching for new properties to sell. So the balance for me, I found not working. So I had to sort of look elsewhere, which is when I was approached by Prestige and Village, which was a great move for me. Really being happy with them.
And so your first property sale must have been relatively recently then, I guess.
It was in August last year. Now, talk about make a rod for your own back. When I first approached the property, I was working on the small fixed fee, which attracted them. It was a beautiful property, an 800 grand house. So, typical, they were looking for the small fixed fee. So I'd gone in and done my full bit on that. And then in the meantime, they were umming and ahhing and taking some time to decide whether to go to market. At which point they got back to me and said, "Yeah, Damian, we're happy to go with you." And I said, about that, let's talk. So I had to then introduce the new model that I was working with, which is more traditional, commission-based, 1% that I was working on, and I had to sort of resell the benefits of working with myself and give myself a wonderful CV, which was quite nerve-wracking because obviously I was new to the industry. But luckily, they sort of bought into it, and we went forward, which was fantastic.
So you convinced them to move from a fixed fee to a commission? I
did, yes. And I think what the benefit I'd had was obviously being sort of very hands-on, and I sort of been quite personable about it. And we'd found a nice synergy between us, and we got on, which I think is half the barrier, to be honest, that price in a lot of things that you could sit there, and I think, without being funny, I think at that point they were so on board with myself, which, I'm not going to work for everyone, but for this couple I did, and they were sort of quite happy to move across because I'd sold them the benefits of how I was going to be working with them directly. I was going to be their one port of call. I was going to do all the sales progression so that they weren't going to be put through to a separate department for this, separate department for that. I would be their one-stop shop. So that wasn't going to change. So the fact that the fee had gone up and was still very, very market competitive, it wasn't like I was going from a fixed fee to ridiculous. It was still a very competitive market rate. They were very happy to sort of move forward with me.
How much more was the actual amount they had to pay compared to a fixed fee? I mean, was it in the thousands or the
Yeah, it
hundreds?
was thousands of pounds. Yeah, it was a percentage of the 800,000, which dramatically changed it. I did do them a bit of a deal. It didn't quite work out at 1%. I included the VAT and things like that. So I did work out a deal to soften the blow, if you like, but it still went up to thousands of pounds, yeah, as opposed to 599.
Wow. And so how did you feel getting that first sale through? Because obviously you had, I guess, that pressure initially, but then what about the actual transaction and following it through and offers and all that sort of stuff?
Well, I was very blessed that it was a beautiful property and it wasn't that old. So the viewings and etc. happened very, very quickly. There was a lot of interest, which was great. So, but also I'm trying to sort of find my feet in the whole industry. So the actual doing the viewings, doing the sale, that I found very easy. That came very naturally to me. So walking through that, and I got an offer in within about a week and a half. So that went really well. Did all the checks, etc. So that, yeah, we moved quite quickly from there. What the real learning curve was, where I had to really find my feet and really put the work in, was the progression after that, because we had quite a long chain. And although my seller and my buyer were good, it was further down that things were just chaotic. So portraying myself as the way I was having to get involved with dealing with all sorts of solicitors that we know are the bane of our life. And yeah, it was a very steep learning curve, put it that way.
And so how long did it take to go through?
Didn't go through. It actually completed in January of this year.
Wow. So that's what, 4 months?
Took some time, yeah. Well, which isn't terrible in the scheme of things, but it felt like a lot longer, put it that way.
Yeah. And so obviously that was towards the end of a stamp duty holiday as well, when there's a lot more supply and demand around. Have things changed since then? How's the market for you now?
I think the market is, the properties that I get are selling instantly. Funny enough, I actually sold my next door neighbour's house in 4 days. Wow. I think if you put the property up with the right imagery, the right wording, and more importantly, the right price, because prices are becoming very inflated, the property will sell very quickly. There is distinctly a lack of properties coming to market, which is why the model that I work with now, which is with Prestige and Village, I can maintain a good living on quality rather than quantity, and working directly with those vendors. So if I can do 2-3 properties a month, then I'm really, really happy with that. But yeah, there definitely is. It's not a glut of properties, as opposed to the stamp duty holiday, when it was just chaos and people were at home with nothing better to do. Also, bizarrely, people felt quite wealthy, because even if they were on furlough, they weren't physically spending any money. So savings accounts were building up, and stamp duty holidays, it was no surprise that it became a sort of absolute race for properties.
Okay. Damian Wanstall, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you. See you again, Mark.